Welcome back, everyone, to our 7-part series on communicating product safety. If you joined us on the first webinar, which just concluded, please forgive my misspeaking that we would be rejoining each other same time, same place tomorrow. I clearly got ahead of myself, but here we are again, getting ready to start part 2 on organizational communications. So we'll give it just a moment or two to allow everyone to join in, and then we'll get started in just a moment.
Hello.
Hello, Cathy, and welcome.
Nice Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Get a little nervous there.
You sound great, and we will be getting started in just a moment.
Okay, and you want me to share my screen?
You sure can.
Where do we have it at? There we go.
Well, once again, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here for part 2 of our Communicating Product Safety webinar series. And again, if you joined us on the last session, I do apologize for getting ahead of myself and saying that we would be looking forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Here we are to start part 2. So once again, before we jump in, I would like to just again say thank you to Don Kornblatt with ADK Information Services and John Pereira as the leader and current chair of the Society of Product Safety Professionals for this wonderful collaboration that is allowing university level product safety education to be brought to our community of product safety professionals. So our last session with Michael Del Negro was a terrific opening session for this 7-part series about communicating with senior management and C-suite executives. We had really phenomenal content from Michael sharing his expertise and some great engagement and questions from our participants and the audience. So we're very much looking forward to continuing that engagement. I would very strongly encourage all of you to drop your questions in the Q&A function. You can see that button at the bottom of your screen, and we will certainly take time to answer those throughout the session or at the end, wherever it feels like the right time to do so. And we are so thrilled to welcome as our speaker for part 2 here today, Cathy Choffin. She will be talking about organizational communications and what that means for us, the product safety community. Cathy is within the product safety division at McDonald's Corporation, and she's going to be talking a lot today about relationships and how we can use our relationships to kind of affect change and how we need to establish those relationships in advance of any crisis that could potentially happen. So again, I look forward to hearing from Cathy. I know you do as well. Please remember to enter your questions in the Q&A. And with that, Cathy, I turn the floor to you.
Good morning. Thank you. It's so great to be here. I'm very excited. And as Lisa mentioned, just, wanted to talk with you more about, just building on what Michael talked about this morning and just more the soft skills and relationship building and how do you really get things done within your company, building on things that you can do every day. So who am I? Just wanted to take this really quick opportunity to introduce myself. As Lisa mentioned, I work at McDonald's Corporation, and yes, it is the Golden Arches. And I am presently part of the global compliance and safety team. I have 20 plus years of safety experience. I'm actually kind of an anomaly in the safety world, as I have done not only consumer product and toy safety, but I've done employee customer safety, for which I'm OSHA 30 certified. I work in packaging safety, worked on chemical safety, including safety data sheets, and also have worked in the realm of playground safety and setting up inspection programs for playgrounds and play places. And, I've done this over the span of my career at McDonald's, so I'm kind of a jack of all safety trade, if you want to put it that way. At the beginning of my McDonald's career, I managed the global Happy Meal toy safety process, where I developed standards and managed and enhanced the safety process for ensuring the over 1.5 billion McDonald's branded toys distributed globally were designed and operated with safety in mind. And this process was supported by a multidisciplinary team comprised of more than 300 internal and external professionals from around the world. I presently manage the consumer product safety process for items supplied to the US, which accounts for more than 100 million items distributed yearly. I created the process with an internal cross-functional team and continue to enhance it as we move forward into a variety of different areas, including catalog items, promotional events, retail licensing, and most recently, merchandising events through our famous Trays promotions. I work very closely with my counterparts on the global side who took the framework of my process and rolled it out to other markets. We continue to work closely to ensure we remained aligned on the framework as things change and develop, as marketing gets creative out there. My career spans global safety, US safety, and now global compliance. Safety within McDonald's is a little different than within other companies, as our main product is food. The Happy Meal toys or consumer products are additions to other businesses, to our business, but not our business focus. One thing I've learned is that safety is safety, no matter what area you are working on. Although the regulatory landscape or standards may be different, the basics of safety are the same. Where I want to focus today is on what I've learned over the last 20-something years working in a global safety arena at McDonald's. Now, my business setup is most likely very different than yours, but I believe the lessons are all still the same, and that is the soft skills needed to be a true leader in global product safety management. You can learn the laws and regulations. You can learn the standards. You can understand risk analysis and mitigation, but if you don't have the necessary soft skills, you won't make an impact within your organization. So I thought this was a great quote, and it really fits this program. And the quote is, "It takes leadership to improve safety." And I'm just wondering if anybody knows who said this. It's actually going back many years, so I'm going to show a little bit of my age. But this is something that Jackie Stewart said. And I'm not sure if anybody really knows who Jackie Stewart is, but he was a British former Formula One racing driver from Scotland. He was known as the Flying Scot, as he competed in Formula One racing between 1965 and 1973, winning 3 World Drivers' Championships. After a very bad crash, Stewart became an outspoken advocate for auto racing safety. He was instrumental in improving the safety of motor racing, campaigning for better medical facilities and for track improvements at motor racing events. But I think it really fits what we're talking about here. I also included this one because I think this sums up what a lot of customers think companies do when it comes to product safety. As a product safety professional like all of you, I know that this is far from the truth. But I know in some realms, it's perception, and perception can be reality. So product safety and stewardship, why is it important to a company? And I'm sure you all know this. You want to protect the customer, which in turn protects the brand, protection of the environment, of course, making sure you're meeting legal and regulatory obligations, and continuity of supply. Techniques and best practices for product safety have been well developed for years. However, there is no one standard approach to product safety management. And as I've mentioned, I'm not here today to talk about developing a program, but to talk about the key learnings I've discovered over the years in globally executing product safety management programs through your soft skills. So many times in the safety world, people think that all you need is to have a rock star safety and QA system. That, of course, is a great start, but to get there, you need to have rock star leadership capabilities, because you wouldn't think so, but safety is a tough gig. I'm sure you've encountered, like me, that everyone thinks they know safety, so they don't need those quote unquote safety experts. But we know differently. And that's where your soft skills really need to be honed. These are some really important steps you need to include in setting up your global product safety environment. And notice I said environment and not management program. Programs are the easy part. There are techniques and best practices out there, but without developing your environment and your soft skills, you will not fully succeed. So I'm going to share with you what I've learned over the years and how to utilize them to navigate the safety world within your company. I know there have been a lot of studies on what makes a good leader, but I'm going to share with you some important aspects of these skills and nuances on how they differ from regular leadership skills in the realm of safety leadership and management. I want to talk about building your soft skills, which in essence will build your personal brand within your company. And these are the 8 that I'm going to focus on. First is credibility. The need to generate a high level of trust with not only fellow employees, but those you will be working with in other departments and in leadership. This requires a willingness to admit mistakes and still advocate the safety interests from the front line to the C-suite. If you are operating in a global company or environment, credibility is so important. And I can't stress that enough. Although all aspects of credibility are important, I want to talk about 5 in particular. The first one is clarity. Is your message clear? You can't waffle or change your mind with the wind. Your message must be clear, concise, and consistent in what you are saying. And that is all the time. Number 2 is accuracy. Are you using accurate data or information? Always make sure your data is accurate as well as your message. I see that too many times when a safety person loses their audience as their data is picked apart. In fact, I come from a company that is very focused on data, so I have to be on my toes at all times. 3 is trustworthiness. How believable is the information you are sharing? How believable are you? Have you built that trust with your audience, your fellow employees, marketing, legal, any of the key business partners that you need to work with on a daily basis? Number 4 is personal character. You need to listen to your audience. Be prepared to entertain different ways of thinking or objections. Make sure to walk through opposing viewpoints and respond to questions. So you are listening. Don't be confrontational. demonstrate that you have considered others' perspectives. After all, why should they trust you if you don't care about them and what they have to say? And 5, make sure to establish your ethics code and always stick to it. In developing your credibility, I leave you with something to think about. Not everything is urgent, and not everything rises to the leadership levels. Know what battles to fight and which ones to walk away from, or to put on the back burner and approach at a different time in a different fashion. But if it's urgent, you need to act immediately and raise the flag. I've been lucky to have built that credibility and with it respect within McDonald's system. Thankfully, when I set up a meeting with the key business partners, they know I have a good reason for it. Now, they challenge me, that's for sure, but they usually come around to my way of thinking. And if not, I know who my champions are, and I'm not afraid to use them. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So some things for you to think about within your company. Have you established yourself as credible and trustworthy? What are some steps that you have taken in your company to accomplish this? And if you haven't taken those steps, you might think about what those steps are right now and who you need to establish that credibility with. Do you also know when to die on your sword for something or when to make concessions? These are some questions that you need to be asking yourself and determining if you know the answers for you and your business. So Lisa, do we have any questions at this point, or?
No, Kathy, no questions from the floor just yet. This is a great intro. So I would, just as a reminder, encourage anyone to use the Q&A function. There's an icon at the bottom of your screen that you can use to drop your questions. And we are still seeing, Kathy, just so you know, the credibility slide on the screen if we want to move past that, just so you know. Good. Okay, yeah. So again, folks, use the Q&A function and look forward to hearing what's next, Kathy.
Great, thanks, Lisa. Yeah, credibility to me is the number one factor in soft skills within your company. If you have not built that up, you really do need to take that time and build it. So the next topic I wanted to talk about was vision. So global safety leaders must have the ability to see or envision what safety excellence looks like, and the capability to consistently articulate it throughout the organization. And before you can articulate your vision, you really need to have business acumen within your company. And this is my favorite topic to talk about with new safety employees. One of the most important things to understand when working in your company or in any company, and especially on a global level, is the structure of your company and how it operates. Also understanding the already established safety culture of your business. Do you agree with it? Are you looking to change some aspect of it? At McDonald's, we're a franchise company and therefore not set up like most of the organizations that you all probably work within. Being franchised globally, we do not have a centralized system. So I really need to know how the company operates, who to go to, different situations, different countries, different markets. Who do I need to influence and who are my champions in certain situations? Lastly, you need to understand your company's risk appetite. In other words, the level of risk leadership is willing to live with. Are they risk adverse or willing to take on some risk depending on the analysis? Are you in agreement with it? And if not, how do you change it? You also have to be in tune with the changing dynamics of your company. Risk appetite is not static. Change with a leadership change, or it may change as a result of an issue. You need to be ever cognizant of this in order to change the way you approach your safety message. Some things to think about as you work within your company. Any thoughts on how your company is structured and how that might affect your approach? Any thoughts on what your company's risk appetite is? Is this globally one message, or is it market by market? And those are really some things you need to know and understand. Really having that business acumen in how your company operates and understanding it before you go trying to affect it or change it or manage it is very important. Because if you don't do that, if you don't really understand how the business operates and how the culture is embedded in that business, you may be doing yourself more harm than actually good. And you may be kind of subverting that credibility that you're trying to build. And this is one message I do really emphasize, because if you don't understand how it operates, nobody's going to want to work with you, because they know that you don't know how it operates, and they're not willing to take the time to teach it to you, because they're moving fast and they expect you to understand what's happening. This one seems kind of obvious: communication. You as a safety leader need to be talking about safety every time you speak. Everything you communicate must be within the context of safety. Your language should be simple and non-technical, understandable to anybody you are talking to, whether to a key business partner, a client, or someone in marketing or legal. Can you condense technical data into layman's terms? And within my organization, I'm constantly challenging. I deal with a lot of labs and trying to understand what's happening with different products. And they talk in a lot of technical terms. So I'm constantly challenging them and other folks within the safety realm to talk more in a format that your key business partners are going to understand, and not in safety lingo or jargon that we talk in all the time. So how can we take it and really condense down that message to something that anyone can understand? It should be a format that can be understood in all the markets you do business in both verbal and written formats. And as I mentioned before, does your company have a safety culture? Do you know it? Have you helped shape it? Effective safety communication is vital to creating and maintaining a safety culture. And are you regularly communicating with leadership, fellow employees, key business partners on safety? The key here is regularly. You need to be reaching out to your key business partners on a constant basis. Let them know you are there to partner with them, to build safety in from the beginning. Let them see you as a partner, not as a roadblock or impediment to getting their project completed. And many times, I'm sure most of you have run into that, where, marketing or somebody in another department, they've got their project, they need to get it done. They don't want to stop for you. They think you're going to add costs on, they think you're going to add time on, and they really, really do not want to include you. But if you're doing your communication, you're building your credibility and your trustworthiness, they know that you're going to come to them as an asset and not as a roadblock. And part of that is your communication interactive? Is it flowing both ways? In essence, you speak as well as listen to what others have to say. Something that I did a while ago is create a safety elevator speech. And I know you've probably heard about this in building your own personal brand, build an elevator speech. But if you're in safety, you should also build a safety elevator speech, a quick, clear message that you are always at the ready to share. I started this a while ago, as at one point I worked in a high rise on the top floor. Leadership had their offices on the same floor, and I would often find myself waiting for the elevator with someone from the C-suite. Many times small talk would take place while waiting for or riding on the elevator, and I often found myself being asked, "How's it going?" Instead of answering, "Oh, it's going well," or "Fine," and then we start talking about the weather or whatever, I decided to use this time to convey my safety elevator speech, to promote my safety message in small bites. In other words, I was laying the groundwork for future conversations. It also gave me the opportunity to let leadership know who I am and build on some of that credibility I've spoken of. And this is not only a good exercise with leadership, but any of your key business partners that might be hostage with you on an elevator, maybe in a line if you happen to run into them at the restaurant, anywhere where you are with somebody for a couple minutes, that you can convey some little sound bites to just embed in their brain. And they'll think about that the next time they see you and talk with you. And they'll know that you're ready to partner with them and not be a roadblock.
So Cathy,
Let me ask you again, yeah.
If I could pause for just a minute, I think that the elevator speech tactic is a terrific one for us product safety professionals to have in our toolkit. And you're talking about a literal elevator speech, but I think it's so important to be able to articulate, like you said, in those sound bites. And I think it really speaks to, what we talked about in the previous session and touched on a little bit today about really creating that culture, right? If you're emphasizing that message over and over again, you're really honing in on making sure that everyone you talk to knows how important that message is. But we did have a question about this elevator speech tactic, and how might you recommend adapting that, since we are, so many of us, still working remotely and really not meeting up at the coffee or at the elevator at the water cooler? How do we continue to do that when we're not together physically?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And for me, I think it depends on how your company is trying to stay connected. One thing I can think of is, for us, we use Teams a lot. And you've got your instant messaging and different tools within that. It's just learning, how can you use those tools that you have available to you every day. And maybe it's just, you see, you were in a meeting with someone and you just pop them off a little IM and, say, "How are you?" And then just kind of do a little conversation. Doesn't have to last long. But it's just making sure that they know that you're still there. Any way that you can work within the parameters of the tools that you have for your company. It's not easy right now, I can tell you that. It really isn't when you're working remote. And I know a lot of other folks work remote all the time. It's not something new to them, but it's getting creative in the tools that you have at your fingertips and learning how to use them for little sound bites to folks when you're not there person to person.
That's great. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think it's going to continue to get more challenging as we move forward, and we have different hybrid situations of working. So it's really just learning what you have available within your toolbox, and how can you make it an asset for yourself. Great question, though. All right, let's go on to visibility. I talked about vision already, and now I want to talk about visibility. And I think this kind of jumps on what you were asking already, Lisa, but an effective safety leader needs to constantly be visible. And you can't hide in your office or in this digital age behind your computer. You need to make it a point to talk or meet with key business partners outside of the teams and committees you meet with on a regular basis. So you need to, again, as I mentioned before, build on those tools that you have available to yourself if you are not working in an office per se, but you're working remotely. What are those tools that you have available at your fingertips that you can utilize to continue to be visible to folks? And if you are in an office environment, again, don't hide in your office. You need to get out there and you need to make it a point to talk with folks outside of those teams and committees. You truly want to be someone they see and know all the time, not just during a crisis or when something has gone wrong, or as the person who is the monkey wrench to their project. So you need to reach out to them and just let them know that you still exist, you're still there, and you're willing to partner with them and help them. Make sure people in your company know who you are and that you are willing to talk through things to come to a better yes. I'll talk about this one more in the next slide, but it's a very key component. So what I mean to say is that if you're not visible, you are forgotten. And thus safety is also forgotten or relegated to times of crisis. So I do challenge all of you. Do you make yourself regularly seen? And what have any of you done in this digital age? What do you do to make yourself seen if you're not in an office environment? If you do work remote, what are all of you doing? What are some key things that you're doing to make sure that you're seen? Do you have any thoughts out there, Lisa? Anybody willing to share anything?
Yeah, I would encourage folks to continue weighing in. This is great engagement, a great opportunity for engagement. We did have one question come in, which is maybe a step back from where you are at the moment, but I think okay to throw out there. And it's related to the notion of your organization's appetite for risk and being able to understand that. And so if we think about that from the communication perspective, the question is really around if that risk appetite varies across departments or across different locations where we may be distributing product. What risks, if any, are there to documenting that in a formalized way? Is that something that we should be doing, we shouldn't be doing? Just thinking about the risk in that kind of perspective.
Oh, great question. First of all, documenting anything, you always need to deal in facts. Don't ever put any opinions down. You just want to make sure you're documenting facts. As it relates to risk, what I would do is talk with your legal partners and what makes the most sense for your company in how to document, or if you should document something like that. Because once you document it and someone doesn't follow it, you're creating more problems for your company than if you hadn't documented it in the first place. But there definitely are times where you do want to document it. But if your company is one that you're dealing with a lot of different markets and a lot of different risk appetites, you need to determine, is there an overall company risk appetite? So does leadership have a risk appetite? And do you agree with that risk appetite? And if you don't, you need to determine, okay, how can I go about affecting that risk appetite? And it could be baby steps. It's meeting with different folks, talking with different folks, getting safety champions for you within leadership or management. Those folks you can go to say, hey, I know this is, X, Y, and Z. What's your thought being in this leadership position is an approach that I can take to help affect this. So you need to have those champions for you, so that when you are willing to fall on your sword, you've got a champion to back you.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of pieces to that puzzle, and I know they vary widely across industries as well as individual companies. So there's some great tips there. Cathy, thank you for sharing that. I think it's important to keep those lines of communication open across teams and departments, and understanding that level of risk. So excellent. Thank you. No more questions at the moment. We can move on.
You're welcome. It really is, in this day and age, it's the soft skills that really you need to build upon within your company. Being a leader is one thing, but if you are not building those soft skills across all the different areas of your company, you're going to be seen as an impediment, and safety is always going to be seen as an impediment. You don't want to be seen that way. You want to be seen as a partner that's helping the company get to a win-win. So you get what you need in safety, and the other departments get what they need to move forward with their projects.
Absolutely.
So if effective safety leaders work well with other employees, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about, you're going to see how it's kind of building on each other, and how it connects together, kind of like the little gears here on the screen. You have to promote cooperation and collaboration. You have to actively seek input from people on safety issues. Just talk with other folks that are not in safety to see what they understand. I mentioned earlier, I know a lot of times when I'm dealing with folks in my company, everybody seems to think they understand safety. But there's so many different nuances to it that you need to take it upon yourself to educate folks that think they know safety, what safety really is. And you need to be able to change that little thought process in their brains to say, well, wait a second, I thought safety, but maybe I really don't know it. So you need to encourage others to implement the decisions to improve safety. This is extremely important because, as I've said before, you don't want the rest of the company to see you as that impediment, that roadblock to getting things done, because safety won't be included in those dialogues the next time around. You don't want to be the safety cop. And that's something that I've tried very hard to build within my company, is I'm not the safety cop. I'm not here to go, stop. It's the 11th hour. You guys can't do this, after they've spent hours of time and money on something. And I just come in there and go, no, can't do it. Now, of course, if, there's a very, very big reason to do that, you're going to want to be able to do that. But, we want to make sure that what you're doing is you're building yourself into these communications ahead of time, so you don't have to get to that 11th hour and stop something. You want to get to the point where they're bringing you in at the beginning to say, okay, what do we need to do? How can we move forward? And how can we do it in the best way for the company, so that we're not spending lots of money or we're adding on unnecessary time? So you need to show yourself as a partner that understands the company and the project and wants to focus on ways for others to get what they want, but also for them to do it in a safe manner, creating a safe product. In other words, getting to that win-win moment. One of my safety mentors here at McDonald's taught me this, and it has served me well in my career. So I always approach the situation as, okay, how can we get to a win-win for both sides here? How can I get what I want, but they also want to get what they want? So how can we think creatively here to get to that end point? What can we do differently instead of doing our standard approach? Can we look at this a different way? Can we approach this in a different format? But it's getting very creative. So, question I ask, are you focused on tackling safety proactively, or do you just react to incidences or putting out fires? Now that you've built your credibility and worked on your communication and collaboration skills, now is the time to begin working on preventative measures to avoid issues and incidences and building your product stewardship. Taking proactive management practices into product development and maintenance, or proactively adjusting performance so that risky situations do not occur with your products. Safety leaders need to show urgency even in the absence of incidences to show you're serious about achieving results. You need to understand the system, though, before it fails in an attempt to identify how it could fail in the future. Let me say this again. You need to understand the system before it fails in an attempt to identify how it could fail in the future. Going back to your business acumen, do you understand how the business works? In other words, what measures can you put in place to prevent issues? Are you using historical patterns to make policy and procedure decisions based on anticipation? Are you being purposeful and comprehensive? For example, are you putting gates within your processes, or are you auditing your process to ensure it's being followed in order to get the results you want? So something that we did at McDonald's several years back, we created our consumer product safety process. We had a situation where we found out it failed. So we had to go back and analyze, why did it fail? We thought we had this process. We found out that it failed because people didn't know it existed, or they didn't know how to follow it. So we had to apply some gates to the process in order to stop things moving forward until everybody did what they needed to do. So you have to look at it in a different way. Is your process understandable to everybody? Have you educated folks on it? And do you have gates in there to prevent certain things from happening? So I hope you've noticed by now that all of these topics are built upon each other and are intertwined. They build on the foundation you need to help you to begin to persuade people. I have a question for everyone. And that question is, do you consider yourselves in sales? You're probably thinking, no, I'm in safety. However, 90% of communications in long-term partnerships, including safety, is sales. In other words, persuading someone to join your way of thinking. For example, you need more money for safety, a bigger budget. You have to convince someone of that, so you're in sales. Usually when we sell to people, we sell how we want to be sold to. However, no one wants that. People want to be sold to them the way they want. Therefore, you need to consider your audience and what is the best way to sell to them. If you don't know your audience, you need to do your research first. Ask fellow employees who may have worked with them as presented to them previously. If it's someone in leadership, maybe get to know their admin and ask for tips on what approaches work best. If it's your key business partners, get to know them and determine how it is that they think and approach things. So when you're selling something, you want to sell it to the audience in the way they want to get it. You need to package it in a way that they're going to understand, not in a way that you understand. And it's very critical to do that, especially in safety, because if you're not doing it the way the audience wants it, you're never going to get them to agree to it with you. So you really do need to do some research ahead of time. So in order to really be able to effectively persuade those within your organization, you need to have these 7 things in your back pocket. We've talked about credibility already and how important it is to establish credibility within your company, as that credibility establishes the trust and respect you need for others to really listen to you in the first place. And I'm sure all of you know this, but before you even go into a meeting or a discussion, make sure you understand your audience, whether it's one person, a few, or many. Are you presenting to leadership or marketing or a client? With each audience, you will need to take a different approach and really think through that approach. It cannot be a one-stop approach. If you have some knowledge of the people you are meeting with and how they think or process information, all the better to assist you in your approach. And if you don't, as I mentioned before, you need to do your research and find out how to do that. Next, it goes without saying, and I can't emphasize this one enough, be well prepared. Know your facts and materials, and be prepared to present the same information in different ways. You need to have that in your back pocket. Someone may throw you a curveball, and you need to be ready for that curveball. I can't tell you how many meetings I've been in where this has happened. The very first time I was not prepared, let me tell you, it wasn't pretty. And I learned a really tough lesson. But I can say that every time thereafter, I have been very prepared. I thought ahead of time of some of the curveballs I could be thrown. I've talked with other folks and said, hey, this is my message. What do you see here? What curveballs can you throw at me? Practice message with others and see if they can throw you that curveball. Lastly, I also recommend that you give company real world examples that your audience can understand. So you need for your message to be put in a context that those that you are talking with understand. So you need to put it into a real life instance within your company could experience or may have experienced. If they've experienced it before, you might want to pull that out and kind of refresh their memories on it. Sometimes these things happened 5, 6 years ago. And I'm sure as with your company as with mine, you've got turnover. So the folks that you're working with now may not have been the folks that were back in the day when X happened or Y happened. So you may have to re-educate people and remind them, or just make sure they understand what has the company gone through in the past that you're trying to avoid going through in the future. And I'm sure many of you, if not all, have heard of emotional intelligence, or EQ, which is the ability to recognize and manage your emotions, as well as the emotions of other people in the workplace and how they drive behavior, both theirs and yours, and then using that knowledge to motivate others. Someone with a high EQ can motivate and influence people, as well as helping them to make decisions using critical thinking and by positively influencing the strategy. Communications is the holy grail of emotional intelligence, a cornerstone of your brand. In other ways, the way you interact and speak with others is core to how you're perceived. Be authentic and be genuine. And next, explain the why. I talk about this a lot within McDonald's. A wise person once told me that this is where a safety leader can go awry, and it's true. I have watched numerous safety leaders take the approach of being safety cops. They don't explain the question most top of mind as they dictate that something needs to be done. Usually we tend to start with what when we want to ask other people for something. However, people want to know the why first, before what. According to science, one way to motivate people to do something is the power of the story. What is not a story? It's a command. But if you start with why, you tell the background. You make your audience understand more. If you take the approach of explaining why something should be done a certain way and have your facts and reasoning backing you up, people are more likely to follow what you have to say. Explaining the why helps paint a clear picture and enables everyone involved to work towards a common goal. When there's clarity, it is easier to communicate and move forward as a team, and others want to work with you. They don't see you as an impediment to getting their jobs done. And explaining the why helps you get to a better yes. How can I help you accomplish what you need to accomplish by also accomplishing what I need to accomplish? In other words, getting to that win-win situation. Sounds easy, doesn't it? But in reality, it isn't. This is where I have experienced or seen other safety professionals fail. And I learned this very early in my career at McDonald's when the first global safety department for the company was created. Now, safety was happening throughout the company at the time. It just wasn't centralized in one place. This is when my safety career started. Not having any mentors at the time, I thought I knew what I was doing. And boy, let me tell you, I learned pretty quick that I didn't. Others saw me as a roadblock to getting things done. They saw me as the holdup because I told them they had to do safety, but I didn't tell them the why. Pretty soon I heard of things happening, but I hadn't been included in the process. They were bypassing me because they thought they knew safety. And if they included me, I would just hold things up and cost them more money. I had to readjust my approach and build my credibility. Today, I have more people coming to me with safety questions than I ever knew existed. And it can be overwhelming at times. But let me tell you, it's so worth it to know that they are coming to you ahead of time to fix something or work something out or just get something to market efficiently and effectively and not have issues on the back end that they didn't anticipate because they thought they knew safety. Last but not least, I cannot say this enough: educate, 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 and mentor. In this context, I don't mean educating yourself, but others. Training for personnel involved in product safety is a given, but you also have to use every opportunity you have to consistently educate your fellow employees and key business partners on safety and on your safety process. Training can't be a one and done. People are constantly moving within companies. And if your company is like mine, people are moving within, moving out, coming in, going here, going there. Nothing stays static. So you can't expect that because you hosted a training session or you met with someone in a particular area, that that information is going to stick or is going to be shared. See this as an opportunity to mentor various people in your company, such as marketing, communications, public relations, other markets, those who touch safety regularly, and even those who don't. Become friends with legal. Don't look at them as a hammer to assist you. Educate them on how they can help you carry your message. Talk with them about educating others on what to put in writing, how to put it in writing, such as stating only facts, no opinions. Ask them to help you educate others in this particular area. Another way to approach this, aside from having regular training sessions, is to have your safety elevator speech ready. Be willing to talk about this with anybody who asks you, hey, how are things going? even if it's through an IM, a text message, or a phone call. What are you working on? Especially if it is someone from leadership. This not only helps to promote safety, but it also helps to merchandise you. And I really can't stress this enough. Establish yourself as an experienced and trusted advisor. In other words, as a safety mentor. And again, educate, 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 and do it constantly and consistently. And I thought this was so appropriate to what I've been talking about that I had to end with this. And it states, let's face it, leaders inspire, and safety people who take the step of becoming mentors and give up being safety cops are the ones who can truly earn the distinction of safety leaders. So change your narrative. Your job should not be seen as safety cop, but should be focused on becoming a safety mentor, or AKA a safety leader.
Well,
Lisa, with that, I would like to know if there's any questions or anything additional they'd like me to talk about.
Well, thank you. First of all, Cathy, you have truly laid out a roadmap here for us today on how to take the steps from the beginning and consistently over time in order to establish ourselves as the voice of safety for our organizations. And that's so important, as you've noted, to affect change. We did hear some nice echoes of our first session as well. Documentation being so important, understanding the risk appetite of our organizations and how to navigate within those things. There's been some great dialogue in the chat. There's been some suggestions about using some type of work time, like a lunch and learn, for example, to do an annual safety presentation, or to bring those different groups together to stay in front of those people and to share the safety message. So I think that's been—
Oh, I love that.
Yes, great engagement in the chat there. And no specific questions from our participants, but again, I think that this has been just a terrific roadmap of how to think through the process and really influence change within our organization. So your experience and sharing it has been invaluable to this group. Again, thank you, Cathy.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough here that, you know, it's just really finding those little ways to get yourself in front of everybody, talking with them, and just sharing constant little safety nuggets and tidbits, and making sure that your message is consistent and that you're truly someone that is going to work with them to get to a win-win situation. And just thinking of ways, how do you get to that better yes?
That's a great takeaway. And I think that, you know, you've stressed the importance of doing that work consistently and, you know, throughout your tenure, and ensuring that it is consistent, because there is turnover. There are, you know, people coming and going. And it's really important to get to the end road of where you are today, right? Where you said people come to you now. People come to you all the time, frequently, and you've built that. And, you know, certainly it's to the benefit of your corporation. And I think we can all work towards doing the same. Keep calm and get your
Absolutely.
safety on is a great way to end this session. So again, thank you, Cathy. Thank you to all of our participants. Certainly, we look forward to seeing you at the next session. And please tell your colleagues registration is still open. And, you know, we look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow. Thank you, Cathy. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, John. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.